2.7 miles of empty air between two mountain peaks. No support towers, no backup plan. Just 3 steel cables holding gondola cars 436 meters above the valley floor. This was the challenge facing Whistler Blackcomb in 2007. They needed to connect their twin mountains before the 2010 Olympics, but no gondola had ever crossed such a gap unsupported. The longest span in the world was barely half this distance. The stakes couldn't be higher. Whistler's reputation hung in the balance, along with their Olympic deadline. What they were proposing defied every rule of cable engineering, but building it was another story entirely. The math was brutal. A single cable, even the strongest ever made, couldn't handle 2.7 miles of its own weight, plus gondola cars, plus hurricane-force winds that regularly hit 80 kilometers per hour. So the engineers proposed something that had never been attempted before, the 3S system. 3 cables sharing the load instead of one. 1 whole rope to pull the cars, and 2 track cables spaced a meter apart to eliminate the deadly pendulum effect that would turn passengers into soup in those mountain winds. But designing it was one thing, building it was pure nightmare. The cables themselves became the first crisis. Each one measured 15,000 feet and weighed 97 tons. Only one factory in the world could manufacture them, a specialized facility in Switzerland where good stuff gets made. 5 massive spools, each heavier than a space shuttle. Getting them from Switzerland to the top of a Canadian mountain became an epic in itself. The spools traveled by cargo ship across the Atlantic, through the Panama Canal, up to Vancouver. Then the real problem started. These 90-ton monsters couldn't fit on normal trucks or trains. They had to be welded directly onto rail cars for the journey from Vancouver to Whistler. But when the train arrived, they discovered the head of Canadian National Railway had parked his luxury rail car right on the tracks they needed. One of the developers had to dig into his pension fund, invest in the railway company, and call the president directly as a major shareholder to get that train moved. Corporate power plays at their finest. Next came the mountain roads. And here's the thing, they weren't really roads. They were ski runs with the snow cleared off. Steep, narrow, muddy paths never designed for 90-ton loads. Enter the 48-wheel monster truck, a specialized heavy-haul trailer that had to drive from Montreal across the continent to move 1 spool. Even with 48 wheels, it wasn't enough. The convoy crawled up the mountain at 1 mile per hour, pulled by 2 trucks from the front, pushed by another from behind. 2,000 horsepower struggling against gravity and mud. Tow bars snapping under the strain. 19 hours to move 1 spool from the train yard to the mountaintop. Then they had to do it 4 more times. But the cable transportation was only the start. The concrete work nearly killed the project before it started. A building boom in the valley had created a massive shortage. Then early snow hit, and the concrete supplier pulled his trucks off the mountain entirely. Construction stopped dead. Days were disappearing. Rick Temple, the project manager, had to helicopter concrete to the mountaintops, flying in cement to build foundations 2,000 feet above sea level, while racing against winter storms and an Olympic deadline. Once the towers were built and the cables finally reached the mountain, they faced the ultimate challenge, pulling 26 kilometers of steel rope across the valley. The cables were too heavy for helicopters, so they threaded a smaller rope first, then used winches to drag the massive cables across. The cables had to be pulled inch by inch, with crews monitoring tension constantly. 12 weeks of continuous pulling. Day and night, fighting weather, fighting equipment failures, fighting time itself. The whole rope had to form a perfect loop. No weak points, no thick spots where the cable joined itself. The final nightmare, cable splicing. Only 6 people in North America possessed this skill. When you need to join a 97-ton cable without creating any weak points, there's almost no one who can do it. Norm, Duke of Wyoming, got the call. He had to unravel 216 individual steel braids from each end of the cable, then hand-weave 220 feet of steel back together strand by strand. Each wire had to interlock perfectly with its neighbor, creating an absolutely smooth surface that could handle 150 tons of tension. The splice had to be stronger than the original cable, yet no thicker. 2 days of microsurgery with steel, performed over a valley that could swallow buildings. One mistake and the entire project dies. Hurricane winds, 90-ton spools, roads that weren't roads, and a pension fund power play. This was engineering at the edge of possibility.
By August 2008, the cables were finally in position. The impossible span was complete. Now came the moment of truth. But Whistler's nightmare was just beginning. Norm Duke had completed his splice, weaving those 216 steel braids back together by hand. The Gondola was ready for its 100-hour test run, the final requirement before getting an operating permit. Everything had to work perfectly for 4 straight days. Then disaster struck. During a routine safety test, a clamp on one of the gondola cars pinched the haul rope. Metal shavings scattered across the cabin roof. The cable that had taken months to install and weeks to splice was damaged. Wayne Wiltsey, Whistler's lift operations manager, felt his stomach drop. You lose your breath for a moment and think, oh man, what's this gonna mean? This could put us back a year. The Olympics were 6 months away. There was no time to manufacture a new cable. No time to repeat the entire installation process. If the damage was severe, Whistler's grand opening would become a gold medal embarrassment. Peter Luger, the head engineer from Austria, flew into damage control mode. He photographed every damaged wire and emailed the images back to Europe. Meanwhile, Norm Duke returned for emergency surgery on the cable. For 2 hours, Norm examined each of the 216 individual steel wires. His verdict: none were broken. Some were bent and pinched, but he could tease them back into place. Cable by cable, wire by wire, he performed microsurgery 140 stories above the valley floor. But fixing the damage wasn't enough. They had to prevent it from happening again. The government inspector wouldn't issue an operating permit until they proved this was a one-time failure, not a design flaw. Peter's team brainstormed solutions on the back of a napkin. Literally, they sketched out a new tool that would lift and protect the cable as gondola cars passed over the towers. The design had to be perfect because there was no time for prototypes. Engineers in Austria worked around the clock. Blueprints were drawn, metal was cut, parts were assembled. The tool was manufactured and shipped to Whistler in record time, a process that normally takes months compressed into weeks. 2 days before the scheduled opening, the new cable protectors arrived. 4 devices that had to be assembled and installed on each tower. Everything depended on whether a napkin sketch could save a $52 million project. The test was brutal. Gondola cars loaded with weight passed over the towers while inspectors watched. The new tool lifted the cable clear of any contact points. No pinching, no damage, no metal shavings. The government inspector signed the permit. Opening day arrived with massive crowds and media attention. Wayne Wiltsey finally had the keys to his revolutionary ski lift. Peter Luger had survived one of the most stressful builds of his career. The napkin sketch had worked. But the real victory belonged to everyone who refused to give up. Rick Temple, who helicoptered concrete through snowstorms. The truck drivers who crawled up ski slopes at 1 mile per hour. Norm Duke, who hand-wove steel cables like a master craftsman. The Austrian engineers who designed solutions on napkins and built them in days. They had taken an impossible idea and made it reality through pure determination and engineering brilliance. The hour-long journey between peaks was now 11 minutes. Mother Nature, who never intended both mountains to be skied in the same day, had been vanquished by human ambition
3 steel cables, and the refusal to accept that some things are impossible. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of engineering ambition conquering the impossible.